Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today we've got 10 new infinite or instant win combos with Aetherdrift. Let's jump right into it. The first one is with the Unstoppable Plan, which is a 3-mana enchantment. It says at the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you control. Now there's several ways to create infinite combos with this card. One of the cheapest ones is with the Strionic Resonator, as well as with Gilded Lotus. Any artifact that taps to, or any permanent that taps for 3 or more mana, you can create infinite mana this way. And there are several other cards besides the Resonator that also tap to copy a triggered ability. Um, but this is sort of one of the cheaper ones. So if you have Gilded Lotus and Resonator out, when this goes on the stack during your end step, you can tap the Resonator to create a copy of it, and you can tap the Lotus to add 3 mana. Now, the Resonator only requires 2 mana to create the copy, so you're going to be netting 1 mana each time you're doing this. The copy will resolve, it'll untap both the Resonator and the Gilded Lotus. Again, you're netting a mana that time, and then you just keep doing it over and over again. You create the copy, net a mana, let it resolve, untap both of them. If you have any other untap things in play, non-land permanents that have a tap ability, you can get infinite whatever that does. There's some cards that tap to do a damage to your opponent, things like that. It also will create infinite mana, of course, if you're netting a mana here. And then if you have anything that can do infinite damage during your end step, for example, like a Volcanic Geyser, you can use that to just end the game right away, do infinite damage with infinite mana. So there's a lot of ways to kind of use this combo. Again, there are other cards too. Anything that taps to create 3 mana, or if you have multiple, like 3 Land War Elves, that would work to create infinite green mana, things like that. And there are other cards besides the Resonator too that can create some redundancy for this combo. So an interesting combo to think about. And yeah, something that could be played in multiple formats. I don't think there's anything in standard. I couldn't think of anything in standard that that taps to copy a triggered ability. But let me know in the comments below if you can think of a standard combo with this. But this was the cheapest one I could think of for older formats. Okay, next up, we've got the Redshift Rocketeer Chief. This card is involved in a lot of different combos. It's 2 mana for 2/3 Goblin Pilot Vigilance, but most importantly, it has this ability to tap to add X of mana of any one color, where X is its power, and you can spend it only for activated abilities. It's got an exhaust for 12 mana to put any permanents from your hand onto the battlefield, which can be relevant. But this card works really well with the Agatha's Soul Cauldron sort of combo that has been kind of floating around in standard for a while. Um, because it taps itself for 2 or more mana, depending on its power, it works very well with the Sleep Curse phase ability to untap it. For example, you can use either one, but if you had the Sleep Curse phase underneath the Cauldron, right, and then you tap the Soul Cauldron to put a counter on the Redshift, it would then tap for 3 mana, right, of any color, because its power would be 3. Then you could untap it for 2, tap for 3, untap for 2, and then you go infinite that way. You could also do it with if the Redshift was under the Agatha's Soul Cauldron, you could give the tap ability to the Sleep Curse Fae, which would then have 4 power. Then it would tap for 4 mana, untap for 2. It would have to not have stun counters on it, but that is another way you can kind of get this combo going with uh, either creature in play and the other one underneath the Cauldron. So that's kind of cool. It does create infinite mana only for activated abilities. However, the Redshift also has the 12 mana ability. So if you get infinite mana, you can activate its 12 mana ability. And if you have anything in your hand, you can just put every permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield, which is kind of nice. If you have something like a Realm, Scorch Hellkite, anything that can use infinite mana to do infinite damage through its activated ability, then that's just a game-winning play there. Or if you have the Hellkite underneath the Cauldron, and you've given that ability to either of your creatures, you can just ping your opponent infinitely there. So this has some standard potential. We'll see. I might build a brew around this. It's very annoying to play on Arena because of so many clicks with this combo. I've tried it before with other kind of Sleep Curse Fae Cauldron combos, but yeah, let me know in the comments below if you want to see this one on the channel. There are quite a few other combos with Redshift because it's such an interesting card. In older formats, you can combo with 2 other cards here, just as a 2-card combo. Freed from the Real, again, is one. It's an aura that is 3 mana. You can put it on the Redshift. It taps for 2, and then you can untap it for 1. Taps for 2, untap it for 1. So you get infinite mana that way, and then you could use its exhaust ability to put all your permanent from your hand onto the battlefield. So you could do that as early as turn 3. And even if you don't have to play blue, you can use Umbra Mantle in the formats where that's legal. And you could do this on turn 3 if you just played Redshift on 2, Umbra Mantle on 3, get infinite mana. It also would create an infinite Redshift. I believe it keeps pumping the power every time you do this. Yeah, you use its ability, it pumps it by 2. So it would be an infinite power. You get infinite mana for activated abilities as well, and you would be able to put any permanents from your hand into the battlefield on turn 3. So that seems pretty good to me. That could see some 60 card format potential, maybe. But yeah, some interesting Redshift combos. There's one more that involves the Mimeoplasm. This one's a little, I would say, much more janky. But if you use the new Mimeoplasm and you exile 3 creatures from your graveyard, so then it has 9 +1/+1 counters on it. If 2 of the creatures are the Redshift and the Sleep Fae, and say the Realm Scorcher Hellkite, um, you can. It gets all of those abilities in a sense that you can pay 2 to tap it for 9 mana, right, with the Redshift's ability, and then pay 2 to turn it to the Sleep Fae and 2 to untap it, and then you can just kind of pay 2 to put it back to the Redshift. So that generates 3 extra mana every time you go through that loop. So that's infinite mana, and then again, if you had um, a Realm Scorcher, Hellkite, or anything else to use that mana with, you could do infinite damage, essentially. Or you just use the exhaust ability, put your whole hand into play as well. So that's another way to kind of get that combo off. It's probably a little more janky, but something to consider with some of the new cards here with the Mimeoplasm. Okay, next up we've got Duretti, the new Duretti Rocketeer Engineer, which is a 5 mana star 5. And it says its power is equal to the greatest mana value of artifacts. And it's got this ability when it enters or attacks, choose target artifact card in your graveyard. You can sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return the chosen card to the battlefield. So if this one works, if this one's a bit janky for sure. Probably not going to see any competitive play. But if you have another Duretti in your graveyard and you have an encroaching Mycosynth in play, which turns everything into an artifact, including the Duretti in play and the Duretti in the artifact, or sorry, in a graveyard, is an artifact. When you play Duretti, you can sacrifice itself to return the other Duretti, because they're both artifacts, and then just kind of loop them. The other Duretti comes to play, sacrifice itself to return the other Duretti. I believe this works. You can just kind of loop them over and over again. It creates infinite death triggers, infinite come into play triggers, which would be, say you had impact tremors in play, that would do infinite damage. So kind of janky, requires quite the setup, but certainly is a fun infinite combo that you could try to pull off in standard. Okay, next up we've got the Thunderous Velocipede, which is 3 mana for a vehicle. It essentially adds +1/+1 counters every time a creature comes into play, and that always works with cards that have persist, such as there's quite a few, but Kitchen Finks is kind of on color, so I thought I'd feature that one here. With persist, when it dies, it comes back with a -1/-1. But if there's a card in play that gives it an additional +1/+1 counter, it cancels out the persist basically. So you can kind of infinitely sacrifice the Kitchen Finks over and over again to a sacrifice outlet. And if you have one that costs no mana and has an effect like Altar of Dementia, you could just mill out your opponent and gain essentially infinite life with the Kitchen Finks and the Velocipede. So another way to kind of get a persist combo going. There's a lot of ways, but this is just another new one here. Okay. Next up, this one is quite interesting because it's just a 2-card combo that creates infinite, well, not infinite, but a lot of zombie tokens. So the Crypt Caller Chariot is 4 mana for a 5/5 vehicle with menace. It says whenever you discard one or more cards, create that many tapped 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. Now, Sage of the Fall says whenever it or another non-human creature enters the battlefield, you can draw a card and then discard a card. So you can see where this is going. You, if you have the chariot into play, and then you play the Sage of the Falls, and they kind of curve into each other, which is kind of nice. Um, then you draw and discard a card from the Sage coming into play. That would give you a zombie, and then the zombie would trigger the Sage. Draw and discard a card. That would give you a zombie. Draw and discard a card. Get a zombie. So you basically get near infinite. I mean, not infinite, because you will deck yourself. You have to stop this at some point. It does give you the May ability, I believe. Enters the battlefield under control. Yeah, you may draw a card. So you don't have to keep going. You can stop. So this isn't going to deck you. But you could create a giant board of zombies. They would all be tapped, which is kind of unfortunate. If you had, again, something in play that triggers every time a creature comes into play, like impact tremors, that would just kill them right away. But you have to make sure your library has enough cards in it too. If you have like 30 cards in your deck, you could create like 29 zombies and then attack the next turn, something like that. So I think this is an interesting combo. Maybe has some chance of being competitive. I mean, it is a 2-card combo that creates a lethal board state. Basically, the next turn, I think both these cards are legal in Pioneer, I believe, will be. So that could be interesting to think about, but I don't know. Kind of cool 2-card combo. All right. Next up, we got some Boommobile combos. Everybody's favorite new vehicle. This card has got tons of combos that enable with it, because it's a 4-mana 5/5 vehicle, and it enters you at 4 mana of any color. You can only use it to activate abilities. And it's got an exhaust ability that kind of like fireballs something. But it goes infinite with Urza, the Prince of Krug, and Training Grounds. So Urza, most importantly, has a 6-mana ability that says you create a token that's a copy of target artifact, except it makes it a 1/1 soldier. And then Training Grounds reduces the cost of Urza's activated ability to 4, which is exactly how much mana Boommobile gives you when it comes into play. So if you have all 3 of these out, if you have Training Grounds and Urza out, and then you play the Boommobile, you can use the 4 mana to create a copy of itself as a 1/1 Boommobile. I believe it just becomes a 1/1 Boommobile, but it still will give you the mana every time, so you can make infinite 1/1 Boommobiles here. If you have like 2 Training Grounds out, or any other way to reduce the activated ability of Urza, then you can start netting mana here. Or if you have ways that like double up the Boommobile's ability, there's other ways to get infinite mana from this. But this is just sort of an interesting 3-card combo to make infinite 1/1 Boommobiles. Again, kind of janky, but could be a fun uh, deck to try out. I guess probably isn't going to be very competitive, but it's certainly interesting again to think about. Okay, and then with Boommobile, there's also other infinite combos. This one does sort of end the game right away, and it's a 3-card combo with, you can either use Colodin, the new Colodin, which when a vehicle comes into play, it turns it into a creature, or the Simulacrum Synthesizer, because when a artifact comes into play, it creates a Golem token, um, which will then be able to crew the Boommobile every time it comes into play. So both of those are used to just turn it into a creature, and then you have the Lily Splash Mentor, which can essentially blink a creature for 3 mana. So if you have Colodin or the Synthesizer, and then the Lily Splash Mentor, you play the Boommobile, adds 4 mana. You use 3 of the mana to blink the Boommobile. You have to have like a blue or a green floating, an extra one, and then you just keep blinking it over and over again with the Low Splash Mentor. And because you have one of these other 2, it's a creature. It creates infinite mana because you're netting 1. You're adding 4, and you're only using 3. If you have the Synthesizer out, that creates infinite tokens as well. So, but you don't really need that, because once you have infinite mana, you can use this exhaust ability to deal infinite damage. So that would require a lot of clicks. Get on Arena. Some of these are much better played in paper, but yeah, some interesting infinite combos with the Boommobile. And then last up, we've got Loot, everyone's favorite, with these exhaust abilities. Most importantly, it's got this exhaust ability to tap 1 to add 3. So essentially, you're netting 2 mana. And if you have the Deadeye Navigator soulbound to it, then you can pay 2 mana to blink it, right? So just the 2 of those cards if you have Deadeye Navigator and Loot, essentially Loot can tap for 2 mana, net you 2 mana, and then you can use the 2 mana to blink it every time. Now, because when you blink something, you can exhaust it again. It's a new game object, so it doesn't really matter that you have to soulbound it here. However, if you have something like Training Grounds, again, in play, this reduces the cost of the activated ability of the Deadeye Navigator, and then you're kind of netting an extra mana every time you're going through this loop. And then once you have infinite mana and infinite ways of uh, blinking Loot, you can do infinite damage to your opponent, or draw infinite cards, or create more mana if you want. But you can use this exhaust abilities over and over again because you're blinking it over and over again, creating infinite mana, and then doing infinite damage. So hopefully that makes some sort of sense. Very expensive combo here. This is, I don't know, maybe for Commander, this will be a fun one to try out. But yeah, let me know in the comments below any cool combos you're thinking about with Aetherdrift. That is what I have for you for today. Probably have another video coming out for some more infinite combos or game-winning combos. But let me know in the comments below what you're looking forward to in Aetherdrift, any other cool combos that you can think of. Really appreciate you watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for supporting my channel, and I will see you in the next video.